Agent of F.O.X.G.L.O.V.E. Ingobnito by Lark Sabre. Read by Lark Sabre. Chapter 13. Little Whifferly. Lincoln glided through the gooky streams of sewage like a toothy harpoon. Sharona appeared to steer him by tapping one bootless, clawed goblin foot, also painted with neon lime green nail polish, behind Lincoln's right eyebrow to get him to turn, you guessed it, right, and vice versa. As she helmed the alligator, Sharona chatted in her nasally voice to John Gobby and Lucky, both of whom were a smidge infatuated, to go by their soppy expressions and attempts to outdo one another.
Hey, Sharona, did you know Boss Brasco said I was going to be a proper gob fella soon? He's opening the books on me and everything, boasted Lucky. Forget about it, Lucky. The big boss was just spraining your sprouts. You's too much of a mooglin to be lefties under cabo, scoffed John Gobby. Now, Sharona, listen up. Boss Brasco told me I got real potential, see? He said I'm going up in the world. Yeah, John Gobby, you's going up, all right. Back up that ladder and onto Braddock's Meadow to be dopey to house elf for some humoglins playing Harry Pockets or whatever that wizard kid's called. Now shut your gazoo. Me and Sharona need a rest from your yammering to get to know each other better.
There was a rumbling growl from Lincoln, which made the ground beneath the passenger's feet shake, which shouldn't really have been shocking, as Lincoln was the ground beneath the passenger's feet. Lucky and John Gobby stopped their macho prattle straight away, unsure as to whether Lincoln's ire was directed solely at the other's rival suitor or at the pair of them. They were equally annoying, so there was no reason for Lincoln to favouritize. You can't be too careful with an alligator, especially if you're hitching a lift on its back.
If Lincoln don't like you, I don't like you,
said Sharona with a neon lime green lipped pout, the she-goblin enjoying not only the flattering status of being fought over, but also the discomfort of the two squabbling sewer soldiers once Lincoln had put them in their place. She loved it when Lincoln got territorial over his mummy. Meanwhile, Lefty stood a little way back from these greeny-grey and grey-green love rivals as he and Hunter took in the sights, such as they were, of the wastewaterways that fleetingly flashed by under the beam of Lefty's Bogsy. In truth, there wasn't much to see, just monotonous algae-coloured walls and the occasional silhouette of a rat. These were proportionally as large as ponies relative to a goblin or a goblin-sized boy, but ponies with vampirish buck teeth and greasy pink tails like writhing prehistoric earthworms. The very thought of these giga rodents lurking in the smelly shadows made Hunter want to wet his blue camo tracky bottoms. He felt a titchy bit guilty thinking it, though he didn't feel that guilty for only feeling a titchy bit guilty, but part of him wouldn't mind if Dr. Nutkenstein switched his mad scientist attention from squirrels to rats. But Hunter kept his cool and kept dry. A good undercover agent has perfect bladder control. So, where are we heading, Lefty, my old gobbo goomba, old mate? Inquired Hunter, affecting a casual air.
Well, I wanted to grab a bog water with you, some light refreshment, but it's best I take you straight to see the boss. My boss, the real boss, the godfather of this territory, Boss Brasco. We need some muscle for our next job, and I like the way you handle yourself, Joey. You remind me of me when I was just a hungry young Sioux soldier for the Mobilino crew. I'm gonna vouch for you, Joey. Get you in under action, seeing as you seem to got that natural beef against them fairies. Now, Boss Brasco owns a bog water drinking joint called La Gabra Nostra, smack in the middle of Little Whifferly, the sewer city run by us Mobilinos. And that, my godbrother from another godmother, is where this gator is taking us, winding its scaly way through these cavernous canals of Humoke night style. Capiche?
Capiche, Lefty. Thanks for that. I'd love a piece of the action, lied Hunter, not really knowing what the action was at this stage, but hoping it might lead to a lead on the fairy dust robberies. The three members of the Mobilino crew and their new prospect continued to travel at a reptilian pace through the eerie sewer system. The alligator ferrywoman's naked goblin tootsies pressed instructively on her living raft, like Lincoln's neck scales were a D-pad on a games console controller, and Sharona's lime green taloned toes were a gamer's thumb. Only this games console was a dinosaur's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, one flushed down someone's toilets when he was a mere hatchling, and the only game you could play on it was Sewer Surfer Simulator, which was fine with Sharona, who could merrily sewer surf from dawn till dusk. If she and Lincoln didn't need to eat and sleep, she might never stop sewer surfing, as dawn and dusk were somewhat indistinguishable down in the sewers. After an eternity of jerkily spotlit sewer walls, shadowy rats like worm-tailed demon beavers, and an unrelenting pitter-patter of drippage, the alligator came to a standstill, and more accurately, a float still. "End of the line, boys!" hollered Sharona. "Little Whiffley!"
"That's gobtastico, Sharona. Now you look after yourself, you green queen."
Lefty thanked the helm's goblinette heartily as he disembarked onto the nearest ledge. John Gobby and Lucky both grinned cheesily on the exit from this crocodile's cousin of a vessel, tussling with each other as they passed her to try and ensure the cheesy grin which lodged in Sharona's mind longest was their own. "Call me Trollface," flirted John Gobby, making a clicking sound with his triangular tongue behind his verminous vanilla choppers and winking at Sharona.
"Nah, call me Toots. I think you's hella more Bella Gobba than John Gobby do. Anyway, he's already going steady with Rio Ripwatelli, a gobble goomer from the block."
Lucky dubbed in wannabe two-timer John Gobby before winking with such competitiveness that he was winking with both eyes and technically just blinking.
"Forget about it, you mooklins. What you fluttering your peepers for, Lucky? You look like some thinkable dame auditioning to marry that winged feather duster King Oberon. And John Gobby, you're clicking your tongue like a goblin and a dolphin had a Gambino called a dolphin, and that cut and shut Gambino was used,"
yelled Lefty, berating his besotted hench goblins with some fairly convoluted goblingo zingers. Hunter followed Lefty and the other suitably chastised pair of Gobbo Romeos along yet another slimy ledge. Sharona and Lincoln turned tail, and what a tail, gliding off into the dark, dank waters to provide more gator portation to other love-struck gobsters. Sharona had many admirers. The stream of sewage began to peter out down this particular route, aside from the odd noxious puddle, so Lefty and the others soon took a big stumble-bum step off the ledge, walking down the dryish bed of the tunnel itself. But Hunter still feared for the longevity of his Mike Air trainers. He was glad they were muck-around jobs from the market if he was going to be on sewer safari.
"The Humogs abandoned this tunnel, so when we retreated from the surface well back in the day, we built Little Whiffley down here. Fortunately, those Humogs left us plenty of building material. Only thing I like about them is that they're mucho scuzzo, even more than us Gurbos,"
explained Lefty to Hunter as they came to what looked like an apparent dead end, little knowing he was in fact talking to a mucho scuzzo Humok, though Hunter failed to see the compliment in out-scuzzing a goblin. The tunnel had been bricked up.
"Get the brick, you elves with croak rats for mamas,"
Lefty barked at Lucky and John Gobby, who rushed over to the bottom right-hand corner of the wall to prise a loose brick out of its brick-shaped alcove. After some customary sniping at one another, the two hench gobs succeeded in dragging the brick forward and out, with the gap it left behind just about big enough for a goblin or four to crouch down and scuttle through in single file, which is precisely what they did. Hunter could hear the faint sound of crowds, and even some scratchy music, which reminded him of buskers and Morris dancers performing in the city centre on a Saturday. It definitely wasn't K-pop. It got louder and louder as he made his way through the improvised passageway, despite being partially muffled by John Gobby's bum in front of him. On the other side, Hunter was presented with a simultaneously gross yet engrossing sight, Little Whiffley. The goblin town comprised of what must have been 50-plus goblin hovels built from bricks made of a material Hunter didn't recognise. What he might well have guessed, however, was that the Godbers had built Little Whiffley out of something decidedly ick, and he would have been right. The town the Mobolinos ran was carved out of a foundational fatberg. A fatberg is a colossal rock-hard blockage in the sewers, caused by an accumulation of all the cooking oils and other gunge humans pour down their kitchen sinks, and all the wet wipes and other detritus they flush down their toilets. When fatbergs became too monstrous, human sewage workers have to hack away at the fatberg with shovels, and then hoover the pieces up into tankers to be taken away to a recycling plant and destroyed. But in this case, the goblins had recycled the fatberg themselves. It had proven quite a versatile material in small hands directed by crafty minds, unhindered by a sense of hygiene. The town was lit up with F.O.X.G.L.O.V.E lights / amulets, strung up on sticks planted in half-melted, oozy mounds of fatberg. There must have been 100 goblins and she-goblins here, some riding rats like they were putrid ponies, as Hunter had surmised they might. This goblin town was raucous, to say the least. Outside their hovels, both godbers and lady godbers were glugging and chugging what Hunter presumed was their preferred beverage, bog water, out of miniature goblets. To be fair, what else would they be drinking out of? On a human scale, these goblets were about the size of mouthwash caps, the lids which double as cups for the minty gargle Hunter's mum nagged him to use after brushing his teeth. From what Hunter had sniffed with a flinch, however, goblin goblets, being a similar size to mouthwash caps, was the nearest the godber ever came to minty gargle. There were some goblin musicians playing torturous folk music on goblin fiddles, likewise of goblin-friendly proportions, with the music itself reminding Hunter of when he accidentally stood on Skullsy's tail. And bad-tempered goblin card games appeared to be taking place at every other goblin table, with some goblin gamblers falling out and descending into goblin fisticuffs, goaded on by goblin bystanders.
But it's nothing compared to your abandoned power station, ain't Joey? Now that would be living. Bet the streets are paved with snot in the big city, eh?
Lefty wistfully commented.
But Little Whiffley is the goblin district here, and it's Mobolino turf. Boss Brasco owns this town.
Boomeranging boggarts, thought Hunter. Little Whiffley is a bit wild. It's like the city centre at night when all the older teenagers go out and have a party and get all giggly like Mum and her friends drinking that Prosecco stuff. I'm only 7 3/4. I'm pretty sure my parents wouldn't want me to be out in the city centre at night, and this is even worse. It's like a big outdoor nightclub, but not even a human nightclub. It's a big outdoor goblin nightclub. And it was only the afternoon when I left. The sun was still shining, though I guess it's always night time down here in the sewers. Hunter followed Lefty, Lucky and John Gobby past more of the fatberg hovels of Little Whiffley. Outside some of them sat she-goblins in raggedy tunics and long stained blouses, cradling goblin babies. Goblin society looked rough, tough and impoverished for the most part, a kind of shanty town free for all, where life consisted of scavenging human leftovers, gambling, coming to blows over gambling, and knocking back goblets of bog water. It was obvious to Hunter Boss Brasco wasn't doing a very good job if he was in charge, but then again, he was a gangster.
Ah, look at them little gambinos,
cooed Lefty, displaying a softer side. Gambino, Hunter had worked out, was the word for a goblin baby. Hunter wondered if Lefty or any of the other godbers had families. He'd also been pondering what the point was of all these fairy dust heists if goblins didn't have wands. Speaking of which, Hunter was desperate to check in with Agent Wildflower, Puckington X, Agent Bluebell, or whoever was on the receiving end of his wandy talkie. He hoped F.O.X.G.L.O.V.E had been monitoring his conversations with Lefty and the crew and got some juicy intel. By now he was keen to get this mission over with and be back in the hobby garden before his mum or Jerop noticed he was missing. Onwards through Little Whiffley traipsed Hunter and his gobster guides until they reached a grand-looking fatberg hovel, which is to say the hovel was as grand-looking as a fatberg hovel could reasonably be said to be. Outside, male goblins slowly sipped goblets of bog water at small, rickety cafe tables. Their tunics were no less grubby than average, though their manner was more reserved and stony-faced than seemed typical for Little Whiffleyians. These seated goblin hoodlums all had hooter-huffers slung from their belts, and several of them nodded at Lefty and the others as they nudged their way through to the entrance. This must be the rest of the Mobolino crew, figured Hunter, a schoolboy Sherlock in a fright mask. Another dead giveaway was the sign reading La Gobra Nostra above the entrance of the grand-looking fatberg hovel, artfully daubed in a sickly, phlegmy green. Hunter shuddered to think what paint would provide such a mucal tinge, but he would have bet a bag of gummy bears it originated in the sign-maker's nostril. Though he wouldn't want to win the bet at all if the wager was over a bag of gobby bears, as Hunter reckoned there was a high chance goblin sweets were produced in nasal orifices too.
Okay, Joey,
said Lefty, standing a little straighter, his tone becoming less matey, more businesslike.
Let's go meet the Don a Little Whiffley, Boss Brasco. See if we can officially turn you from an empty tunic, some no-nose gob's buddy from the big city, into a Mobilino sewer soldier, one of my crew. Remember, Joey, you gotta show the boss a lot of respect, capiche? Imagine if King Ogden came back from the grave. That's Boss Brasco when using Little Whiffley. It's his way, or you go swimming with Lincoln.
Gabish, nodded Hunter warily. He was in deep now, too deep for comfort.